And a good Eagle morning, everybody. You got your Mac and Mac guys, Jody McDonald and John McMullen here to talk Birds football with you for the next 2 hours on show number 498. We're getting close, Johnny Mac. Thursday will be
498. Can we make it, Jody McDonald?
the 500. Yeah, I'm planning on being here the next couple of days.
I don't know. I'm worried about a sprained ankle or something.
Yeah, high ankle sprain.
Yeah.
We'll have
it's getting nice out, so yeah, it's supposed to be 70s today.
Yeah, not as bad getting the dog out this morning. But we're here for the next 2 hours. We got two good guests coming your way, two friends of the channel, of the show. And in case you're wondering how rapidly has free agency slowed, yeah, pretty significant. Because yesterday, my intake of football, yesterday, Johnny Mac, was all about the draft, which we're still more than 3 weeks away from. We've got 2 days and 3 weeks to go before the draft, but everybody's mocking their life away and giving their best guess scenarios for what's going to happen come draft time. And the Philadelphia Eagles are staying busy by opening their doors and bringing in potential draft picks. And they had a couple of Georgia guys in yesterday. Not a bad idea, not a bad way to go about doing things. Bring in guys from national championship teams. They did it last year in the draft in the first and third round, and they could be doing it again, including one who some people had. And we're going to have Rick Saratella on, our pal from NFL Draft Bible, in less than 20 minutes from now. And if memory serves, Ricky, the first mock draft that he put out postseason, I'm not talking about going back to last year, but after the college football season was over and done with, I'm pretty sure he had Jalen Carter as the number one most talented player in the draft. Not necessarily that he was going to go number one, but his positional rankings, the Jalen Carter was the guy who sat above all others in talent coming into this draft. We know he had the off-field issue, which is the reason why the Eagles are even in the conversation at number 10. And they just made the cutoff. This is what made me laugh more than anything else. I love when players take stances like this. He refuses to visit with anyone who doesn't have a top 10 pick. That's kind of putting yourself on a pedestal before you ever play down in the National Football League. But I like his confidence. You know the Eagles. You know the way they handle players and their way of doing business prior to getting to the NFL. Are the Eagles, I guess if they brought him in for a visit, that you have to believe they're considering him if he's sitting there at number 10. Are the Eagles going to potentially call Jalen Carter's name on draft day?
Yeah, I doubt it for this reason, Jody. One, if everything checks out, he's not getting to him at 10. So that's number one. If everything doesn't check out and there's some issues and people do their due diligence and they find that, you know, it wasn't a tragic mistake, the crash, you know, the fact he was out of shape at his pro day and couldn't finish, you know, maybe that was related to all the issues he was going through in his personal life. Maybe he was, whatever. Maybe he was depressed, whatever. Maybe it's an outlier. Maybe everyone figures out young people make mistakes. You move on. There's no legal, everything's settled from that standpoint. So to me, there's two camps, right? Like people say, all right, this kid's just made a mistake. He's really good. You're not getting a 10 in that instance. Or this is a red flag. There were some issues. You know, Dom DeSandro's doing he got in trouble before that we don't know about and all that kind of stuff. And if that's the case, they're not going to want him. So I think they're in a position where sort of like, just remember, we were talking about yesterday when everybody does their mock drafts, they don't take into account the 31 other teams. They're doing their due diligence. They're doing all their homework. And he's too good. As you pointed out, you know, Rick probably had him number one. I don't know.
We'll have Ricky on in 15 minutes. He'll tell us whether he did or not, but I'm just going
most
off the top
teams
of my
had
head.
him number
I think he had him
one.
as the number one pick.
Most teams had him number one overall player. You look at last year's number one overall pick from the same school. He's a better prospect than him. That gives you an example. Just from a pure football standpoint, Trayvon Walker. He's really good. So I think they're in that position where if the off the field stuff isn't an issue, if people assume, as I said, it was just one mistake and he'll get back on track, he's not getting to him. And if he's a big issue, the Eagles aren't going to want him. So I think it's very, very doubtful that he's going to be here.
Right. Let me ask you about one of the two scenarios that you're painting, because you've got a good grasp on it. But if you're just going by, and we'll use Rick Terratella as a base, the most talented player, the player that grades out the best, should go number one. Doesn't always happen that way. It probably won't happen this way either, because I don't think anyone had either Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud as the highest ranked overall player, and I still believe they're going 1-2 in the draft. So it doesn't always work out that way. But if you're the most talented player, the highest graded player, and the first couple teams pass because they're going to a different position, and the teams that could actually use your skills or whatever says, no, too big a risk, we're not going to take them. At some point, someone is going to say, yeah, we acknowledge and we know that we're taking a bit of a chance with this player because of his off-field issues. But when you put it on the scale, the talent wins out. The talent outweighs the downside risk with taking a guy who's got some personality issues, some behavioral issues. When does that number kick in? If it doesn't do it for the Eagles at 10 and it does it for whoever's drafting at 12, are the Eagles going to say, yeah, we didn't care, we had him off our board, we don't care how good a player he becomes? Or do they sit there and potentially second guess themselves for the next decade?
Yeah, well, you always, I go back to Warren Sapp. He was in that a guy like that. If you want to go Randy Moss on the offensive side of the football, you always second guess if it works out, but second guess isn't going to get you anywhere. It's your decision making in the process. And, when people were talking about him being the number one overall pick, it was because Chicago had the number one pick before they traded out. And they were very likely to take him if they couldn't make a deal. They were always going to be able to make a deal because we know the quarterbacks are going to be at the top of the draft. But they're still at number 9. They only went down to number 9. So, as you know, I'm not in love with that organization. But if there's anybody who's going to do it before them, you might even go to Atlanta, who's before Chicago. I just can't envision a scenario where he falls to number 10 to begin with, unless he's an abject disaster off the field. And I'm not saying he is. I got to make that clear. I have no idea what's going on with Jalen Carter off the field. 0, 0, 0. That's what I'm saying. He's never getting to the Eagles unless he's an abject disaster and everybody's running away. Like, the opposite of first responders. They're running away, Jody. And if it's that bad, the Eagles are going to be in that camp. The Eagles are not going to be the one that says, I'm going to take on Jalen Carter. That's my opinion.
I understand your opinion, but I'll ask the question again. It might be a question you'd say, Jody, I can't answer because I don't have the prerequisite information to be able to answer it. Somebody's going to take him. And if the Eagles say at 10, how about he falls all the way till 30? 29 other teams, there's probably a couple of teams in there that got 2 picks, so a minimum of 27 teams, have said, thank you, no, we won't take this young man, but he's sitting there at number 30. Then the risk-reward value changes from taking him at 10 to taking him at 30. Is that a possibility? When do you draw the line where you go, all right, we know we're doing it. It's like you got a bad habit. You smoke too much, you drink too much, whatever. And you say, yeah, I know I got a bad habit, but I don't care. I enjoy it too much. This is my life. When do you say, we know the kid's got a potential to be trouble and miss games and everything else, but to get this kind of talent at this spot in the draft, how can you not do it? General guess at when that can happen?
From what I know about the Eagles, and when they red flag somebody and when they take them off their board, they don't take them off their board completely. They take them off until day 3. That's been their history. whether it's injury, whether it's off the field stuff. They're not going to consider it until day 3, and then they would consider it. But that's not going to happen. There's no way in a million years this kid's going to be ball to the 4th round unless he's going to jail in the next week that I don't know about. But yeah, I just can't envision it from a football perspective. I've said this from day one. It's a no-brainer. If he's number 10, the Eagles are taking him. If there's no issue, how does he fall to number 10 though? If there's no issue, I can't picture it. And ultimately, I think he's not falling to 10. So I want everyone to understand that, because people jump down your throat. Well, you taking? No, I think he's a top 10 pick. I think he's going before the Eagles select. And there's no, but in the scenario you're giving me, from what I know about the Eagles and being around the Eagles, when they red flag somebody, they'll start thinking about him in the 4th round.
Yeah, and he will be well gone before the 4th round. I'm kind of with you. And again, we're going to have Rick Saratella on in less than 10 minutes. Ricky may have added information to what is already out there about Jalen Carter and how he's being looked at by not only the Eagles, but all 31 other NFL teams. Yeah, I think someone in top 10, even if there are warts and red flags attached, I think someone's going to call his name out. Another Georgia player, Kelee Ringo, DB, was also in for a visit. I don't think he's someone who merits being picked at number 10 if the Eagles stay there, but the all-inclusive, well, if the Eagles trade down conversation, which, remember, fans, you got to have a partner to do that. You can't just wave your magic wand and say, we'd like to pick at number 17, because then Kelee Ringo might actually be a value pick and we could call him out. You can't just make that happen. It has to be a trade that Howie Roseman can get done. Another Georgia guy that they're going to bring in. Here's my question to you, and then I'll ask Ricky of this as well when he comes on. Eagles have had upwards of 12 or 14 guys in so far, and we're still 3 weeks out from the draft. You're allowed 30 visits from players to come in and bring them into your own facility and sit down with them, put them through whatever workout you want. This started back in, I would say, the second week of March was the first time they brought a player in. We know Bijan was in a couple of weeks ago. I could throw out some other names for you, but it's been ongoing for at least 3 weeks. What do you read into the timing that some guys they bring in like a month and a half before the draft, and some they want to wait till just a couple of weeks before the draft? Do we read into the timing of when the Eagles invite these young men in for their pre-draft visits?
Not really. A lot of that's just logistics. A lot of these guys are visiting, multiple teams. So,
sure.
They might, somebody might have called first and they got, hey, I'm going to be in Chicago. I'm going to be in Los Angeles. I'm going to be in Seattle. So let's do it on this day. So a lot of the timing is just, when is he available? When you can get it done. So I don't put much into that. And I was just, wrote about this. I was talking to an ex-GM that you can maybe guess, but I don't want to say his name. But and I asked him about top 30 days, because I asked all these, and people make such a big deal out of it. And he said, "Look, if you're bringing somebody in, there's a modicum of interest. There's at least some interest. Why would you?" But it's about, and as I said, I think on yesterday's show, it's about, you don't have the finished product when it comes to your report. So there's something missing information wise, and you want to figure that out. And I started thinking about Darius Geis. If you remember Darius Geis, the running back from LSU, big time talent, blamed out, had a lot of issues, lasted, I think, 5 games, was a 2nd round pick. A lot of people thought he'd be a 1st round pick, late 1st round pick. Eagles loved him as a player, had a lot of interest in him, them probably 2nd round. But, they didn't have a real good meeting with him at the combine. Didn't have the best personality, rubbed some people the wrong way. But they loved the film, they loved the player, and they brought him in for a top 30 visit. They said, well, let's see what happens. Now, there are a lot of reports at the time, which I've never confirmed, that he had a screaming match with Howie or Deuce Staley, one or the other.
Really?
Yeah. And I never believed it for this reason. That Darius denied it. I never, Deuce denied it. Nobody's screaming at Deuce Staley. He would have ripped his head off. So I never believed it. But I never believed it. But what I was told was, yeah, everything at the combine was just reinforced, not a fit for what they felt with the Eagles. Now, so that's an example of a top 30 visit. The reason I'm bringing him up, that's an example of a top 30 visit that ruled him out. He was no longer in the equation. So when I think it can go both ways. You might have somebody in for a reason because you want to figure something out and it doesn't go the way you want. And then you say, hey, I'm done with this kid. That could be just as likely a scenario as the opposite. So I get it when people see names and they say, oh, the Eagles must be interested. Yeah, they want to find something out about those particular players.
Right.
It could be very good. It could be very bad.
You never know which way those meetings are going to go. They could go either of the two ways. Geis, Washington?
Washington played 5 games because of injuries, was out of the league in 2 years. He had sort of domestic violence allegations, out of the league very, very quickly.
I remember him at LSU. He was a player, but you're right. Yeah. That's the reason why you have these visits to judge, is the player worth the squeeze? And in Geis's case, it certainly wasn't. You could call it a wasted second-round pick by Washington. All right, Jody McDonald and John McMullen, a.k.a. Mac and Mac, will continue the draft conversation with the best in the business. I've been having on my shows for over a decade. You know him from here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Rick Saratella from NFL Draft Bible is going to jump in next here on Birds 365.